have been silent, God, when Keenan should be teaching and loving his family and loving his baby. And so, God, we pray today that you would give us the energy to meet the physical force with soul force, to uproot and abolish this system of police brutality and the system that keeps on stealing our lives. We are sick and tired of the death and the violence in this city. So God, give us energy to erase this system, to uproot this system, to get rid of this system, and protect this family and all of the angelic troublemakers that will fight for justice. Help us know that it is our right to protest for our rights. So give us strength to continue the protest until victory and accountability is won for Keenan and for all of those who have been stole by state-sanctioned violence. In Jesus' name I do pray.
Good morning, and thank you everyone for joining my family and our community during this time of tragedy. I want to thank Black Lives Matter Los Angeles for continuing the fight against police violence for the last decade and holding strong and supporting families. Not ever did I think I'd be one of those families that was receiving the support. My name is Patrice Cullors, and I am one of the many cousins of Keenan Anderson. For those of us who have spent our entire lives in Los Angeles City and County, we know all too well the ways in which law enforcement has created a painful cycle of death and violence in our communities and families. Many of us have not one, but multiple stories of law enforcement harassing, disappearing, maiming, abusing, and killing our family members. Over the last decade, community organizers, educators, activists, and allies of Black Lives Matter have protested, called for legislative change, spoken locally and around the world to establish conditions that actually value Black lives. Unfortunately, many of us have been gaslit, attacked, and thrown under the bus for simply calling for Black folks to live long, healthy lives free from the violence of police and criminalization. This morning, our family launched a petition alongside Black Lives Matter Los Angeles and Grassroots, demanding that Mayor Bass and LA City Council members hold LAPD accountable for my cousin's death. We want to see the unedited footage. We want Mayor Bass not to appoint Chief Moore for another term, and we want a complete reevaluation of cops at traffic stops. There's no reason why law enforcement should be the first responders at a traffic stop or accident. Let's fund unarmed professionals trained in crisis management, care, and de-escalation to respond to our loved ones. Lastly, no human being deserves to die in fear. No human being deserves to spend their last hours of their life begging for help. No human being deserves to be humiliated publicly and stripped of their dignity. Keenan, you deserved care. Keenan, you deserved compassion. Keenan, you deserve to be in your classroom supporting your students. Keenan, you deserve to have your wedding day. Keenan, you deserve to be raising your son. And now that you don't get to do all of these things you deserved, we, your family, and your community will fight like hell for you to receive justice, because you deserve justice. Ashe.
Hello, everyone. Our brother Keenan has always been a ball of joy, bringing smiles on everyone's face that he encountered. He really treated life like there were solutions to any problem, never sweating the small things. Keenan as a kid was sensitive and shy, a bit chunky, so as he got older and dropped his baby weight, he picked up so much confidence. But he was never egotistic or self-centered. Keenan was always fearless. I never saw fear in his eyes, but I saw it on January 3rd, 2023, when he encountered that traffic officer. Excessive force and over-policing is an existential threat to Black bodies all over the United States. When I think of Keenan, I try to remember good times and memories and the great advice that he would give, but those thoughts are always interrupted by the words, "They are trying to George Floyd me." Not only is this tragic, but it is extremely traumatizing to accept the reality that no matter the accolades, education, or career, in the eyes of the law, you are simply just another Black man in America that does not matter. The officers showed us their lack of empathy and lack of concern for Keenan and his cries for help. The detectives showed us their lack of empathy when they took 3 days to inform us that Keenan was no longer with us. Chief Moore showed us his lack of empathy when he released a preliminary toxicology report and victim blamed Keenan to paint the narrative that Keenan died from an overdose and not from being tasered upwards of 6 times, despite his pleading for help. Swift action is what we need for these senseless killings, over-policing, and miscarriages of justice handed down by law enforcement. We need this to stop. Our brother Keenan deserves to be alive with his family, friends, and teaching his students today. He also deserves to be hugging his son, but instead his son is left fatherless because of a chance encounter with LAPD taking Keenan's life, and our family is left to pick up those pieces. Keenan was not a threat to any of those officers on that day. And for them to treat him unimaginable the way that they did just shows the lack of humanity displayed upon Keenan from those officers involved. If you continue to blame the victim and not hold officers accountable, why would they ever stop killing us? The police are supposed to be here to protect and serve the people, and yet they abuse their authority and have a lack of respect for human life. And this is from my siblings to Keenan Anderson. And thank everyone for supporting us with their condolences and keeping his story alive and donating to us in this tragic time. Thank you. Okay, sorry. And I'm Dominique Anderson, Dominique, and I'm the younger sister of Keenan Anderson. Thank you.
Yeah, Patrice Cullors, Patrisse, last name Cullors. Thank you.
Jerome.
Okay. My name is Jerron Bricknack. That's JARONBRIGNAC. I'm Keenan's cousin. I'm a legal researcher. Keenan Anderson's death was a result of excessive force and negligence by the LAPD on January 3rd, 2023. This is not an accusation and is not a legal conclusion. These are statements of facts substantiated by the LAPD's own taser course published online. Just Google it, lapdonline.org, and click electronic weapons course. I'm just going to reiterate some pointers from it. To avoid cardiac arrest, an officer must avoid prolonged and repeated exposure to the suspect. The training manual specifies at the beat, which should be at the count of 5 seconds, the officer is to release the taser. Did the officer do that with Keenan? No. 7 times for 10 seconds of a duration is beyond a prolonged time. It's frying. This is part of the training course was negligence. Delirium. Any officer faced with an individual who appears to be in a state of excited delirium should, if feasible, develop a tactical plan prior to taking action. Did this happen in Keenan's case? No. We all saw the video. An RA was supposed to be called to the scene per the training manual, which again is online. Did this happen with Keenan? No. Erratic behavior. What I noticed is a large percentage of cases that I came across were officers using their report that the suspect or so-called suspect was exhibiting erratic behavior. This is a cover-up to utilize their excessive force or negligence. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals recently ruled that it's excessive force by a taser, a case known as Hyde versus City of Wilcox. That's 23 Federal 4th at 863. It's the Ninth Circuit last year. In Hyde case, a similar case to Keenan, the officer used a taser for about 5 seconds. And then another officer held Hyde's arm to force Hyde's head into a restraint hold, while 4 other officers fastened Hyde into a restraint chair. This was another taser-related death. One must ask, was the force excessive when the arresting officer tased Keenan for up to 10 seconds while he was pinned down by more than a handful of officers with a forearm to his throat that deprived him of oxygen, giving him only enough air to utter the words, "They're trying to George Floyd me"?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Bonin, B-O-N-I-N. I used to work here until a few weeks ago, and I'm here today for a number of reasons, one of which is Keenan Anderson died about a mile from my home. And after the vigil that night that my family attended, my son said to me, "What are you doing next to help in this fight?" And the family asked me to come here today to talk about a particular piece of legislation that I had worked on with Marquise Harris Dawson that can still move forward. Keenan Anderson should be alive today. Dante Wright should still be alive today. Philando Castile should still be alive today. They and so many others could be and would be if we did not marry policing and traffic enforcement. Dijon Kizzee would be alive today. Sandra Bland might be alive today if we did not marry policing and transportation. One of the most deadly and insidious aspects in society right now is the marriage, the intersection of racism, of transportation, and policing. And it can be done differently. The city of Berkeley is moving away from using policing for traffic enforcement. Around the corner at LA Metro, we are moving away from using policing as the primary public safety response. We have created a system of community ambassadors, unarmed people who are out there on the system, being a first set of eyes and ears, calling service agencies if someone is in mental health distress, helping people navigate the system, connecting people who are unhoused with services. That model can be used here in Los Angeles. Imagine if on the 3rd, after that collision, unarmed civilians responded and noticed the distress that Keenan Anderson was in and called a crisis counselor or a mental health professional who could have guided him and calmed him and eased him. He would be alive today in the warm embrace of his family. Marquise and I made this motion back in the spring of 2020, shortly after the murder of George Floyd. That motion got stuck in the bureaucracy for a very long time. It is moving forward, and it needs to move forward faster. And I'm here today to stand with the family to say that this must move forward, must get done. And I'm here today to stand with Marquise and Hugo Soto Martinez and the other members of this council who are committed to this work and who need the support of the people of Los Angeles to get this done. This can happen. This will happen. We cannot let another death like Keenan Anderson's happen again. My condolences to Patrice and to the entire family.
Thank you, Mike Bonin. My name is Marquise Harris Dawson. I'm a member of the Los Angeles City Council. I represent District 8. And during my time here, I've had far too many of these types of events where we are grieving with families that have been lost or taken, who've had their family members taken because we do not respond to mental health calls with mental health care. We respond with guns and badges and blaring lights and shouting and commands that people may or may not be in a position to adhere to. Just this year, we've already lost 3 people. I will not be convinced by anybody that any of those people deserve to have their life taken, least of all Keenan Anderson. His students should be able to learn from him. His family should be able to love him. His community should still have him at this moment. As Mr. Bonin said, we have 2 motions in process in the City Council. One is on our mental health responses. The other is alternative to policing in traffic stops. If I run a red light, I shouldn't be confronted by a government worker with a deadly weapon. There's just no reason for it. And there are far too many bodies in graves, far too many lost loved ones to demonstrate the point. The police departments all over the state, including here in Los Angeles, the Sheriff's Department, the State Highway Patrol, they've already told us that they disproportionately stop and search black young men and women on our roads and highways. Since they can't manage themselves, we need to take them out of that business and give it to somebody else that can handle it. When there's a car accident and there's the yellow tape and we're measuring and we're taking pictures, we don't need 8 government workers armed with deadly weapons. There's just no reason for it. And all too often it ends in the injury of or death of our people. And so I'm here today to stand with the families and just communicate to the city and to the press. This kind of thing happens so often, it feels like they expect us just to take it for granted. But every one of these wounds is fresh, and it hurts tremendously. And every time it happens, we're going to be in your face, and we're going to be fighting until we all do better as a city and as a state and as a country. And so I thank you all for being here today, and I want to thank the family and thank Black Lives Matter LA for pressing the point to our city as it should be.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Horvath, LINDSEY HORVATH. I am a supervisor for the 3rd District of Los Angeles County. I am not happy to be here this morning. I am heartbroken, and I am here as a friend of the family, as a friend of friends of Keenan Anderson and so many others whose lives have been taken. This is not someone who died. This is someone who was killed, and that is unacceptable. We need to speak out. We need to show up and be there for each other in times like this. We have those of us who have titles, who hold seats in these buildings, in this area. We must do the work, but we must also step up and speak out as human beings. Watching these videos of young black men being killed at the hands of law enforcement changes you. And if it hasn't, it should. That is unacceptable. We are seeing these videos now in our social media. I don't want to witness the death of another black man, of another person at the hands of law enforcement, and witness that video while being told that I should somehow see how it was justified for their life to be taken. I don't want to participate in a system that says that is acceptable. It changes you fundamentally as a human being when you witness it, and it changes the people who are enforcing the laws when they have to step up and say that what their actions were justified. We shouldn't have a system that's built on justifying the deaths of people at the hands of law enforcement. We need a system of care. We need a system of protection of life. We need a system that values life, including and especially black lives. We need a system of care that goes out and responds on our streets and shows up when people are calling distressed and looking for help, with support, not with harm, not with devastation, and certainly not with the loss of life. So I'm here today in solidarity with the family and friends. I am here to stand as witness to what happened, to say that it did happen and it must not happen again, and that we all must take proper action to ensure that all the roles that we play, whether you are a supervisor, council member, or citizen, we all have a role to play in changing the system that we don't want to see perpetrating this violence. Thank you.
I'm going to make my comments in Spanish, but first of all, I want to send my love to all the families here and the activists and organizers doing this work every single day. It's not easy to be around so much pain, so much hurt. It's taxing, but I send my love and my compassion to everyone here. We have a lot of work to do, and we got to keep on fighting. La semana pasada la policía sacó cámaras de los 3 oficiales en sus acciones cuando estaban lidiando con 3 personas con problemas mentales. En vez de mandar ayuda y tratamiento para estas comunidades, ellos fueron tratados con fuerza mortal de parte de las 3 policías en los primeros 3 días del año nuevo. Las familias de Keenan Anderson, Takar Smith y Oscar León Sánchez están sintiendo un dolor tan profundo y ellos merecen justicia. Las policías que estuvieron involucrados en estas acciones deben de ser despedidos inmediatamente. Los tratos del departamento de policía son una amenaza en nuestra comunidad. En el momento cuando nuestros familiares necesitan ayudas mentales, de adicción, de tratamiento, son tratados con fuerzas letales. Un policial trató a Keenan Anderson con un taser, tratándolos más de 7 veces, mientras él estaba gritando, me están tratando de hacer como George Floyd. Keenan Anderson, Takar Smith y Oscar de León no merecen ser matados. No podemos seguir que esto pase en nuestras comunidades. Tenemos que reemplazar a las policías que ahorita están matando a nuestras comunidades con realmente los servicios que necesitamos. Hay diferentes ciudades haciendo diferentes programas. Cuando alguien tiene un episodio mental, la persona que llega es una persona profesional, sabe cómo lidiar con cosas mentales, sabe lo que necesita la comunidad. Ciudades como Denver, en Oregon y hasta en Orange County están haciendo estos tipos de programas. ¿Por qué Los Ángeles no debe de ser el líder en estas situaciones? Pero hasta que nosotros en Los Ángeles no cambiemos ese sistema, vamos a seguir llorando y doliendo por nuestros familiares. Hoy pedimos a todas las personas, los demás líderes de esta ciudad, de que por favor vean los deseos de las comunidades. Nosotros fuimos elegidos para estos cambios y nunca más debemos estar aquí con este tipo de dolor con nuestras comunidades. Muchas gracias.
My name is Eunices Hernandez. I'm the council member representing the 1st District here in the city of LA. You know, Keenan Anderson, Oscar Sanchez, Takar Smith, all 3 of them were killed because as a city, as a county, we have not built the necessary services to prevent crises and to deal with crises when it occurs. And it's infuriating. Before I ran for office, part of the work I was doing was trying to build out more of these mental health crisis response teams. And we still see today, ask yourselves, if your loved one was going through a mental health crisis right now, what would you do? What would you do? Call 911? Many of the people in the videos were killed when people called 911 for help. They wanted help. They wanted care. And instead, they were met with the system that is built, which is law enforcement, which is guns, which is tasers, which is those rubber bullets. All of those things were used in many of the people that were killed in the first 10 days of the year. Why? Because we have not built enough mental health care, support services, enough housing with permanent supportive services. And it's time that we actually implement it because the plans exist. The County of LA has plans around alternatives to incarceration, which include how do we support the loved ones of people who have mental health needs? How can we pay them? How can we train them to take care of their loved ones? We can use county resources to do that. But instead, most of our budget is going to law enforcement to respond with lethal weapons, regardless of what they call them. And so I call on my colleagues at the county level. I call on my colleagues on the council that we cannot let this moment pass us. We must invest significantly in the resources that are going to prevent people from getting killed when they call for help. Because think about what would you do if your loved one was suffering a crisis right now. You want care, you want support. You want someone that's going to wait it out instead of killing someone within 15 minutes of arriving. Why not give people time? These are the things we need to build out. And so I call on my colleagues to do that today and to not miss this moment. We have budget cycles coming up. We need to invest heavily and significantly in this. And real quick in Spanish, mi gente, estamos en un momento donde quiero que piensen, ¿qué hicieran en este momento si su familiar estaba en un momento de crisis? ¿Qué hicieran? Llamar al 911, ¿verdad? Para ayuda. En estos casos de Takar Smith, Keenan Anderson, Oscar Sánchez, estaban en un momento de crisis. Gente llamó para apoyo cuando necesitaban apoyo. No estaban hablando para que la gente sea matada. Y en este momento tenemos que reconocer que estamos en este momento porque no hemos invertido en los apoyos que van a ayudar a nuestra gente para que no tengan estas crisis y que para que puedan responder cuando las crisis existen. Y so les hablo a mis colegas al county, mis colegas en el council, que no se dejen pasar de este momento, que tenemos que invertir una parte muy significativa de nuestro presupuesto para invertir en estos recursos, para que cuando nuestra gente, cuando ustedes, cuando sus familiares necesitan hablar para ayuda, que la ayuda venga a su casa, que no sea algo que va a quitarle a sus familiares, como una pistola, como policías, en un momento de crisis. O por favor, hablen sus representantes para que apoyen meter más recursos en prevenir problemas de salud mental, crisis mental y para apoyar a nuestra gente en nuestra comunidad. Gracias. Mi nombre es Eunices Hernández, miembro del Consejo, representando el primer distrito. Gracias.
So as we prepare to go into City Council chambers, my name is Melina Abdullah, M-E-L-I-N-A. Last name is A-B as in boy, D as in David, U-L-L-A-H. And I'm co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles and Black Lives Matter Grassroots. And I just want to offer my not just condolences, but solidarity and pledge to struggle for justice in Keenan's name, to his family and loved ones, to his students. And I think that so many of us were moved when we witnessed that video we saw in Keenan, our own selves, our own brothers and fathers and sons and cousins and nephews. We connected with what was happening to Keenan, and we felt the terror that he felt. And we were moved by emotion. There were hundreds of us who stood together on Saturday night in the pouring rain, lifting Keenan's name. We were moved by emotion and by spirit. We're here today to say that we must turn our emotion, our spirit into action. We're compelled to do work to make Keenan's life matter, to make Black Lives Matter. We're grateful to all of the families that stand together. I see Anthony Vargas's family. I see Melly Corrado's family. I see James Mincy's family. Other families are here to say that in the name of Keenan and in the name of all of their loved ones, we have to move action. And so we have 5 demands in the name of Keenan Anderson. One is Michael Moore gotta go. He cannot be reappointed as police chief. No more Moore. No more Moore. Number 2, we have to remove police from traffic, from mental health, from schools, from bus stops, from transportation, in every place that they obviously don't belong. Number 3, there has to be a policy around tasers, because less lethal doesn't mean non-lethal.